We continue now at the top of Daf Lamed Dalet Amud Aleph in Mesechet Kesuvos. This is Kesuvos Daf 34a. On the previous Amud, the Gemara had brought a brisa with a machlokas between Rabbi Meir and the Chachamim in terms of a situation. Let's say a person slaughters an animal that he stole, and the case is either he's slaughtering it on Shabbos, or let's say he's slaughtering it to Avodah Zarah, or let's say it's a shor haniskel, an ox that is supposed to be stoned, and therefore one is not supposed to derive benefit from such an ox, and he slaughters that. So there was a machlokas whether you pay the usual 4 or 5 times the amount, which is the amount that you pay when you steal an animal and then you slaughter it. Rabbi Meir says you are chayiv, and the Rabbanan say you are not chayiv. And the Gemara in the previous summit had suggested that according to Rabbi Meir, why are you chayiv in a case, let's say, by Shabbos, where there's a chayiv misa, why are you also chayiv to pay? Generally speaking, again, if you're chayiv misa, so you're not going to be chayiv to pay. And so the Gemara said, no, there is no chiyuv misa over here, because what he's actually doing is he's instructing someone else to do the tvicha. He's telling someone else to do the slaughtering, and therefore he's chayiv for the payment, even though he himself is not chayiv misa, because he didn't actually do the slaughtering. But the Gemara then asked, if that is the case, so how do you understand the Rabbanan? Why would the Rabbanan say you're pater from arba v'chamisha? Why would you be pater from paying 4 or 5 times the amount if you didn't even do the slaughtering? There's no chiyuv misa. What's the reason for the patur? And so the Gemara now suggests that the Rabbanan follow the opinion of Rabbi Shimon. They follow the opinion of Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon happens to hold that if you do a shchita, but it doesn't allow the animal to be eaten, and the Gemara here is assuming that in all of these cases, you shechted on Shabbos, you shechted to Avodah Zarah, Shor HaNiskel, all of these cases, if you do the shchita and it's not going to allow, that shchita will not allow the animal to be eaten, therefore it's not called a shchita, and that's why the Rabbanan say you do not have to pay the arba v'chamisha. And so the Gemara says, "Hateinach avodas kochavim v'shor haniskel." I understand, for example, if you shecht it to avodah zara, or let's say it's a situation of a shor haniskel, again, that is an ox that is supposed to be stoned. In those cases, the shechita will not allow the animal to be eaten. Ela shechita Shabbos, but when it comes to shechting it on Shabbos, shechita ruyahi, even though you violated Shabbos, but the shechita is considered a good shechita, and you are allowed to eat the animal. Rashi over here says, "Hateinach avodas kochavim." I understand avodas kochavim. The zivchei mesim asurim, that's referred to as zivchei mesim. It's usher to eat that. V'chein shor haniskel, the same thing is true. Let's say you have an ox that is supposed to be stoned. Demisha nigmar dino, once the court rules that this ox needs to be killed, usher bahano. At that point, it becomes forbidden to derive any benefit from it, and therefore the shechita is not going to allow it to be eaten. Kedamrinan b'bavakamu v'psachim imash b'shanemar sakol yisakel ein yodei shu nevelu nevela. That's what the Gemara learns out in Babakam and Psachim. But again, what the Gemara says is when it comes to Shabbos, if you shecht an animal on Shabbos, even though you violated Shabbos, it should be permitted to eat. And the Gemara brings a proof from this. The Tanan, as we learned in the Mishnah says, Hashochet b'Shabbos of Yom HaKippurim. Let's say a person does shchita on Shabbos and Yom Kippur. Again, he violates Shabbos over here. Afal pisha mischayev b'nafsho. Even though he's chayev misa for shechting on Shabbos, shchitaso kasher. Still, his shchita is considered kosher in terms of allowing the animal to be eaten. So you see straight from a Mishnah that even though you do shchita on Shabbos and he's mischayev b'nafsho, still the shchita is kasher. That seems to be a shchita ru'uya. And so to that, the Gemara answers, Savar lo Rabbi Yochanan Hasandler. You can answer that no, he holds like Rabbi Yochanan Hasandler. In other words, over here, it is true, there's a Mishnah which says that if you shecht on Shabbos, you're allowed to eat it, but there's an opinion that disagrees with that. And according to that opinion, it's a shchita she'ena ru'uya. That's the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan Hasandler. The Tanya, as we learned in a brisa, Hamevashal b'Shabbos b'shogeg yochal b'mezid lo yochal divrei Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir's opinion is, let's say a person cooks on Shabbos, also a violation of Shabbos, similar to our case of shechting on Shabbos. So if he cooks on Shabbos, so Rabbi Meir says if he does it by mistake, he can still eat the food. But if he does it on purpose, he cannot eat the food. Rabbi Yehuda says b'shogeg yochal motzoi Shabbos. B'shogeg, he's allowed to eat it, but not right away. He has to wait till motzoi Shabbos, a point in time when he would have been allowed to cook it. B'mezid lo yochal olamis. If he does it b'mezid, so then he's not allowed to eat it forever. And here we have Rabbi Yochanan Hasandler. Rabbi Yochanan Hasandler Omer. Rabbi Yochanan Hasandler says, "B'shogeg yochal l'motzai Shabbos." If he does by mistake, he eats it l'motzai Shabbos la'acherim velolo, but it can only be eaten for others and not for himself. B'mezid, but if he does it on purpose, lo yochal olamis, he cannot eat it forever. Lo lo v'lo la'acherim. He's not allowed to eat it. Others are not allowed to eat it. So again, you see, according to Rabbi Yochanan Hasandler, this really is a shchita she'ena ru'uya. Now Rashi over here explains b'shogeg yochel. This is going in the opinion of Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir says if he cooks on Shabbos b'shogeg he can eat. Afilu bo bayom. The point is, according to Rabbi Meir, even on that very day on Shabbos he's allowed to eat. B'mezid lo yochal means to say hu liolam. If he does it b'mezid, he can't eat it forever. Aval acherim yisraelim ochlam. According to Rabbi Meir, others could eat it. They are allowed to eat that item which was cooked on Shabbos, even others who are Jewish. Rabbi Yehuda Omer b'shogeg yochel. Rabbi Yehuda says if he does by mistake he can eat it, meaning hu l'matzoi Shabbos. According to Rabbi Yehuda, we're a little stricter. He has to wait until Matzei Shabbos. V'lo bo bayom. He can't eat it that very same day. The konsinon shogeg atu mesid. We have a fine, even though he just did it by mistake. But because of the case where he did it b'mezid, we have this fine that he has to wait till Matzei Shabbos. B'mezid lo yochal hu olamis. Now, if he does it b'mezid, according to Rabbi Yehuda, rather, so then he can't eat it forever. He can't eat it forever. Ela acherim. Rather, others would be allowed. But Rabbi Yochanan Hasandler Garcinon Yeyachel. Now, in Rabbi Yochanan Hasandler, I read it as Yochel, but really it's Yeyachel because we're talking about others. So Rabbi Yochanan Hasandler is talking about others eating it. La'acherim, meaning li Yisrael for others, means to say as follows. According to Rabbi Yochanan Hasandler, if it was done by mistake, so others are allowed to eat it l'motzoi Shabbos. That's b'shogeg Yeyachel l'motzoi Shabbos la'acherim v'lolo. That's others are allowed to do that. La'acherim li Yisrael lo v'lo li'acherim. But if he does it amazing, nobody's allowed to eat it, not him, not others. Yisrael means to say Jews are not allowed to eat it. You could sell it and give it to non-Jews, to idol worshippers, that would be fine, but it's talking about Jewish people are not allowed to eat it if he does it amazing, not him, not others, and that's forever. So again, you see Rabbi Yochanan Hasandler, that it is considered a shchita she'ena ru'uya. And so the Gemara continues, my time with Rabbi Yochanan Hasandler. What is the reason of Rabbi Yochanan Hasandler? Rashi over here says, my time with Rabbi Yochanan Hasandler, the Amar Maisa, Shabbos, Asur, and Bachila. Why does Rabbi Yochanan Hasandler say that if you violate Shabbos and in preparing the food, that you're not allowed to eat the food? And the Gemara answers, Kedidarish Rabbi Chia apischa devei nasi. It's like Rabbi Chia darshan at the entrance of the house of the Nasi. Ushmartem es haShabbos ki kodesh hilochem. It says you have to keep Shabbos because it is kodesh. So it compares the Shabbos to kodesh, to hektish. Ma kodesh asur b'achila, just like hektish, it's asur to eat it. Af ma'isa Shabbos asur b'achila. So too, if you violate Shabbos in order, let's say, to cook or to prepare the food, it's going to be forbidden to eat it. So in other words, the source comes from this pasuk. And so the Gemara continues, ima kodesh asur b'hana. But if you're going to make this comparison between Shabbos and kodesh, why don't you say as follows? When it comes to kodesh, not only is it a problem eating the kodesh, you can't even derive benefit. Af ma'isa Shabbos asur b'hana. Are we going to go so far as to say that even on Shabbos it's prohibited to get benefit? And so to that, the Gemara says, Talmud lomar lochem. No, the pasuk says, Ki kodesh hi lochem. It says for you, and that means to say, Shalochem yehei, that it could be for you, meaning to say you're allowed to derive benefit. And the Gemara continues, Yachol afilu b'shogeg. Now, I might think that this applies even if he violated Shabbos b'shogeg, that we're so strict. Talmud lomar mechalaleh mos yumas. The pasuk goes on to say that if he violates Shabbos, then he gets the death penalty. That's talking about specifically on purpose. B'mezid amarti lach v'lo b'shogeg. We're talking specifically when you do it b'mezid, not when you do it b'shogeg. Rashi over here says, Yachol afilu b'shogeg te'aser b'achila. I might think that even b'shogeg it should be forbidden to eat. Im shagag b'bishul shelo yadashu Shabbos. Let's say he didn't know that it was Shabbos and he cooked on Shabbos. Mechalaleh hechadik a chiyav misa. The Gemara says no, only in a situation where there's a chiyav misa, as we'll say b'mezid asira b'achila kikodesh. Then we say it's a problem. B'mezid amarti shu aser. We're talking again by mezid situations that it becomes compared to kodesh. That would not be true when it is b'shogeg. And the Gemara continues, Pligi bar Ravacha v'Ravina. There was a machlokas about this issue between Ravacha and Ravina. Chad Omer Maisa Shabbos Doraisa. One opinion says that Maisa Shabbos, meaning again, if you violate Shabbos, as Rashi over here says, Maisa Shabbos b'mezid. If he violates Shabbos b'mezid, Asurin min hator b'achila, then he cannot eat that food midoraisa. Rabbi Yochanan Hasandler. We're going within the position of Rabbi Yochanan Hasandler. So they were trying to understand what exactly does Rabbi Yochanan Hasandler say. Is it a doraisa problem or derabanan? So one says that Maisa Shabbos is doraisa. The Chad Omer derabanan. The other one says no. Rabbi Yochanan Hasandler was just saying a halacha miderabanan that you can't eat the food. It's not midoraisa. And the Gemara says, Man damar doraisa keda'amrin. The one who says it's doraisa, that's like what we just said. We just quoted the psukim up above. Man da'amar derabanan. Now the one who says it's derabanan, Amar Kra, that's because the pasuk says kodesh he. It says it is holy. He kodesh, meaning to say it is holy. Ve'ein masa kodesh. But on a doraisa level, if you violate the Shabbos, it's not considered like kodesh, and therefore on a doraisa level, it's not a problem. It's only a problem on a derabanan level. And so the Gemara says, 1 second. According to the one who says Rabbi Yochanan Sandler's halacha is only a din d'Rabbanan, we're back to our original question at the top of the Yomid. My time mayu d'Rabbanan de patri. What's the reason of the Rabbanan that they say pater? Again, in this case where you have somebody else come along and shecht this animal that was stolen, the answer we gave was that it's a shechita she'ena ru'uya. And we said it's a shechita she'ena ru'uya because you violated Shabbos according to Rabbi Yochanan Sandler, but that's not true. According to Rabbi Yochanan Sandler, it's a shechita ru'uya. It's only on the Rabbanan level that you're not supposed to eat it, but on the Doraisa level, it should be a shechita ru'uya. As Rashi over here says, my time of the Rabbanan de pligi ad Rabbi Meir. What's the reason of the Rabbanan who argue on Rabbi Meir? Upatri miknas arba v'chamisha. They say that you don't have to pay the fine of 4 and 5 times the amount. Hoel u'v'toveach al yedei acher ukimta. But since we've already said that someone else is doing the slaughtering, so the person's not chayiv misa, hashchita ru'uya hi midoraisa. Isn't it a shchita ru'uya on a doraisa level? And so to that, the Gemara answers, Ki klapatri Rabbanan, you're going to have to say, according to this approach, when do the Rabbanan actually say pater? What were they talking about? Ashara. They're only going on the other cases. Meaning to say, you're correct when it comes to Shabbos, that would be considered a shchita ru'uya, and therefore over there the Rabbanan actually would say, indeed, that the person is chayiv 4 or 5 times the amount. When the Rabbanan said pater, they were going specifically on the case of Shor HaNiskal, and the case of Toveach la'avodas kochavim. And the Gemara continues, Toveach la'avodas kochavim. Well, let's go to that case of Toveach la'avodas kochavim, when you shech the animal for avodah zara. And so again, we had the machlokas over there between Rabbi Meir and the Rabbanan in terms of whether you're chayiv arba v'chamisha. But the Gemara says there's another reason why you should not have to do arba v'chamisha. Kevan d'shachar be'porsa. Since at the moment that he shechts even a little bit, itzar le, at that moment it actually becomes forbidden. That's considered already like he shechted it for avodah zara. And idach, and so when he completes the shechita and does the rest, kikot lav demari katavach, at that point in time, so it's usher to get any benefit from this. It's not really owned anymore. It's an ownerless item. And when he's shechting it, he's no longer shechting the item that belonged to the original owner. And so therefore there should be no arba v'chamisha in any case. As Rashi over here says, Kevan d'shachar be'porsa itzerle, the Amar Mar, because the master said in Chulin Haisa behemas chaveiro revuza lifnei avodas kochavim, the animal is crouched in front of the avodah zara. Kevan sheshachar ba simin echad asra, once you shecht even the first simin, that's considered, that makes it forbidden. And so therefore again, lav demari katavach. So he's not really shechting the animal that belonged to the original owner. At that moment it already became prohibited to the original owner. And when it says that you have to pay the 4 or 5 times the amount, you have to do a real shchita. You're not really chayiv until the finishing of the shchita process. But before you even get to the end of the shchita, it's already become forbidden to get benefit al ba'ala and the owner. So already from that moment it's already lost to the original owner. The isalo hadrabein, at that point, even if it was around, he can't return it. V'lav demari, doesn't really belong to the original owner anymore. It becomes ownerless. It becomes prohibited to get benefit from it, and so therefore again, it should not be considered a shchita that obligates you in 4 or 5 times the amount. That is the question of the Gemara. And so the Gemara answers, Amar Rava. Rava says, Ba'omer, very simple. The cases where he happens to say, in this case, Be'gemar zvicha hu ovded, that we're only serving the avodah zarah when we finish the shchita, and therefore really it does all happen at the exact same time. As Rashi over here says, Ba'omer be'gemar zvicha hu ovded la'avodas kochavim, the person specifically says, I'm serving the avodah zarah at the finish, at the conclusion of the shchita, eno oved la'avodas kochavim ad gemar zvicha. It's not going to be considered serving the avodah zarah until the finishing of the shchita process, so you don't have this problem. And the Gemara continues, Shor HaNiskal, when it comes to Shor HaNiskal, also we have a question like this, Lavdi Dehu Dekatavach. Again, a Shor HaNiskal, an animal, a shor that is supposed to be stoned to death, you're not supposed to get benefit from it. So again, he's not really shechting his animal, it's like an ownerless animal. And again, there should not be the chiyuv of 4 or 5 times the amount. Similar question as before. And the Gemara answers, Amar Rabba, Rabba says, Hachab Mayaskinon, here the case is as follows. Kagon Shemasara l'shomer, the case is that the person gave the animal over to a shomer, v'hizik b'beis shomer, and actually the animal damaged, that was during the time that it was being watched by the shomer, v'nigmar dine b'beis shomer, and that's when the bezin ruled that it had to be stoned, that again it was still in the possession of the shomer, v'gon v'ganam b'beis shomer, and it was also stolen from the house of the shomer, and that's going to solve this problem. Why? Because Rabbi Meir savar lak Rabbi Yaakov, savar lak Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Meir happens to hold both like the shita of Rabbi Yaakov, which we'll quote in a minute, and like the Shita of Rabbi Shimon, which we will also quote, and the Gemara explains. Savar like Rabbi Yaakov, number one, Rabbi Meir holds like Rabbi Yaakov, the Amar, because Rabbi Yaakov says, Af mi shenigmar dino, even after the court has already ruled that this animal needs to be stoned, hechziru shomer labailov muchser, still, the shomer fulfills his obligation of returning the animal to the original owner if he returns that animal, even though this animal is set to be stoned. It's asr b'hana, it's really not worth anything, but at the end of the day, the shomer received an animal and he returned an animal. This animal could have been returned, and before it was shechted, before it was stolen from the house of the shomer and shechted, it really could have been returned. V'savar like Rabbi Shimon, and additionally, Rabbi Meir holds like Rabbi Shimon. Damar davar hagorim l'mamon k'mamon dami. Rabbi Shimon happens to hold that if something causes a loss of money, that is considered to be like actual money. So therefore, there is a certain monetary value here, in a sense, to this animal, even though it's asur b'hana, because it has a value that this shomer is able to return it, and if he can't return it, if something happens to this animal, he's going to be obligated to pay. It's gorim l'mamon, and therefore it has a certain monetary value, and that's why the stealing and then shechting of this animal will in fact obligate the person to pay 4 or 5 times the amount. Rashi over here says, Hechziru shomer l'bayil of muchser. Again, if the shomer returns this animal, even though it is a shor haniskol, it's considered returned to Amar Le, because the shomer can say to him, Torah ashalam tali, Torah ashleim islach. You gave me an ox, I gave you back an ox. And kimam and dami, it's also considered like money. It has monetary value because it's getting him out of an obligation. V'hainami, here also, Alvagav de lo shavi midi, even though the ox is technically not worth anything, gorem l'mamanu, it does cause a loss of money if he doesn't have that ox to return. Because again, if he doesn't have it, he's going to have to pay back an actual ox. The Rabbi Shimon b'Baba Kama, Parak Meruba, this sheet of Rabbi Shimon is in Baba Kama, Parak Meruba, Kachim Shechai B'Achrayusan, Meshalim Arba, V'Chamisha Mishum de gorem l'mamanu. He says exactly this. If you're chayiv b'Achrayus, if you have your responsibility on the item, it causes you a loss of money, so you have to pay 4 or 5 times the amount on such an animal. Even though hektish is not really mamon bailim, it's not really considered to be shaykh in the knas department because of the fact that it says re'ehu over there. But again, according to Rabbi Shimon, davar hagorim lemamon kemamon dami. And the Gemara continues, Rabba Amar Rabba says, Liolam b'toveach al yedei atzmo. Actually, going back to that original brisa, that brisa is talking about a situation where the person actually shechts the animal himself. And again, going back to the previous summit, if you're going to say that the person did the shechita himself, then it seems to be that Rabbi Meir is saying, even when in a situation where a person is chayav misa, the person will pay money as well. But if that is the case, the Gemara had asked on the previous summit, so then even in a situation where a person is ma'anis, a person rapes his own daughter, where there's a chayav misa, again, if we're going to say that the Mishnah follows Rabbi Meir, the person should have to pay the knas, and that is not what our Mishnah says here in Kesubos. And we'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Lamed Daled Amud Beis.